to the video series on the 9 story modes from the story selling philosophy. And of course, my book, Shift and Disrupt, Stop Selling Widgets, Start Selling Wisdom, is predicated on the story selling philosophy. And so the stories that to date that we've gone through together include the internal stories, those internal stories that we tell ourselves about the buyer. We're going to change gears a little now, and we're going to go to the external stories. These are the stories that we tell our buyer, but not just tell them, we show and tell our buyer, because being collaborative around telling stories is super important, and it's a skill that not many salespeople have been taught. Sure, we've been taught how to articulate our company story or our connection story or a success story, and they are super important, and so they are a brilliant baseline. I want to change things up a little here because we need to be different out there in the marketplace. Our buyers are telling us that we are not bringing enough value to the table, and we need to do more of that. But it's like, what does that look like? You know, insight selling. What's an insight? How do I go and sit and bring insight to the buyer's table over and above giving them a white paper? And so what my whole intention behind the story selling philosophy is to actually share some of these different external stories that we can show and tell our buyer by using mental models, by being able to pick up a pen and go stand on a whiteboard and draw a model, whatever that model is, and be able to collaborate and get buy-in from our buyer because we're actually sharing a combined common story that they will say yes to. And of course, it's got to be about them. So let's dive into the very first story that I want us to reflect on, or just to kind of get your head around it. And that first story is a progression model. So my daughter, when she was little, you know, she, like many of us, you know, there was a window frame, and she would come to me with a pencil and she'd say, "Mum, can you mark me? You know, can you mark me on the window, the window frame?" And of course, you know, from when she was knee high to a grasshopper, you know, right the way up, we would mark how she had grown. And so it's this natural feeling humans have that we want to see growth, that we want to see progression. And if we just think, and buyers are no different, by the way, and so they want to be able to see some form of progression or see some form of growth and a pathway that allows them to see that. So if we think of some of the well-known progression models that are out there, you know, you think of Maslow's hierarchy. So all of us know that progression, and we pit ourselves, where are we? And do we go up and down? Of course we go up and down. And so, but there's this pattern from, you know, pure survival to self-actualization. Dr. Claire Graves has a brilliant model known as spiral dynamics. And once again, it takes us from survival and me-focused all the way up to this higher level, you know, Dalai Lama, Mother Teresa, that kind of level. And it's a growth, it's a path, it's a progression. Tony Robbins' 6 core needs, it's the same thing. So human beings love to see some form of a progression. And so as a story that we can grab a pen and paper and you know, we can chart a ladder. It could be a value ladder. It could just be lines going up the page, but we get agreement at each stage. So if we were to consider a buyer out there in the marketplace today, most buyers are at that level of, you know, they're at that level of skepticism. Here comes another salesperson. Here's another email. Here's another LinkedIn connection. And so skepticism is super strong out there today. We need to get our buyers up to, you know, another level. It's like, well, what's that next level up that they've got to get to? How can we get them to become a super fan? So if we can create our own progression model behind the scenes, in our own little workspace, in our groups, in our sales teams, if we can collaborate on some form of progression model that we can then grab a pen or, a serviette over coffee and say, well, look, this is where we think you might be. This is where, we think you might want to be. Why don't we just kind of flesh that out? And there's buy-in there, but it's buy-in at a personal level. And so a progression story done in the way of a model, a value model, is very much about why your buyer must change. And so I want you to give some consideration to that. What might the layers be for your buyer? What might they be? If I'm saying that my buyers are at that skepticism and I want to get them to the super fan level, there's stages that I have in my own model that I put on the table and we collaborate on. And of course, now the why for change is so strong because it's so relevant and meaningful. And that's what we've got to get to. It's how do we guide our buyers through the whole concept of change. So I want you to give some consideration to what your progression path for your buyer might be. It's a little bit of thinking work, but this is what we've got to do. World Economic Forum, the Jobs of the Future report says we have got to come to the market today with creativity, with complex problem solving, and with critical thinking. And I also want to add courage. So on that note, have an amazing day. Please go to www.shiftanddisrupt.com, register for the launch of my book, which will be very, very soon. And after the fact, there will be resources as well. So you will become part of my world and I will keep you in the loop. Follow me on YouTube at the StorySeller channel and subscribe to that, and of course follow me on LinkedIn as well. On that note, have an amazing day and have a very progressive day, and I look forward to speaking to you.